Shalom, and welcome to Christians with Torah, the Beit Tehillah Community Podcast. We believe the Torah is relevant for our lives today, God's teachings and instructions. You may very well be part of the first generation to be born again, filled with the Holy Spirit, and have the Torah, a Christian with Torah. Join us as we honor the living God through the study of His Word, topical conversations, and interviews with special guests. Please welcome our hosts, Pastor Nick Plummer and Ryan Cabrera.
Shalom, everybody, and welcome to Christians with Torah, the Beit Tehillah Community Podcast. I am here in Studio B, our beautiful Studio B, and today I have a very special guest with me, Mr. Shmuel Junger, all the way from the land of Israel with Christian Friends of Israeli Communities. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, it's exciting. Exciting to be here, exciting to have you. I actually just myself got back from the land, so it's,
Awesome.
It's like being back in the land almost,
Okay.
It's like, wait, you're here. I was there. I mean, everybody's everywhere. The world got really small really quick,
I don't think I represent the country. You should be more in the country, not only meeting me.
Okay, I agree.
Hopefully.
So the first thing I want to do is I want our audience to get to know you, Shmuel. Kind of where you're from, where your parents from, you married, kids, all that kind of stuff.
Sure. So, where do you start? Let's start with the fact that I always understood from a very early age that my family is a bit different.
Okay.
Was it so? Because I'll give you the locations.
Sure.
My grandparents came, my parents came, where I came from, where my children came from.
Okay.
Intention. Mother's side. Father, Algeria. Mother, Tunisia. She's from France.
Wow, okay.
Talking about born.
Yeah.
Father's side, Czechoslovakia. Holocaust, everything.
Yeah.
Grandmother from Palestine. How come Palestine? Israel before
Yeah.
48. Born in Israel.
An actual Palestinian.
Actual Palestinian. My father was born and raised in Colombia.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I was born and raised in Israel.
Okay.
3 out of my 4 children were born and raised in Hong Kong. Maybe that's a part that I'm going to talk about later, how I ended up in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
So think about the fact that when I was a child, I noticed like something is different. Why is that? Because all the family from my mother's side did not live in Israel. They all lived in France. So we're like by ourselves. With my father, my mother, and us, and that's it. I have 1 sister. And the funny part, people ask me about my English. You were born and raised in Israel. You have pretty good English. Where did it came from? The answer is it came from TV.
I was going to say France.
Right. So, but that's the point, because my father spoke English. From Colombia, they came from the U.S. and they came to Israel.
Got it.
But my mother did not know English. She's French. So in my home, we never spoke any other language but Hebrew. And poor Hebrew, if you want to know.
Sure.
And I adopted the language after that. I wasn't from Samaria originally. I was born in Netanya. If you know, it's a very nice place, town on the coast.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, many people immigrated there from England, from France. It's like we call it the Riviera of Israel. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I had pretty much a very Israeli upbringing. Like I learned in the school. The whole family, we did something, we call it tshuva.
Yeah.
The word tshuva.
Sure.
Repenting.
Yep.
And the fact that until my 4th grade, the family wasn't religious. I'm talking, we didn't keep Shabbat. We weren't into it.
Yeah.
Something flipped in my parents. And when I was in the 4th grade, I moved to a religious school, and the whole family had this transition to stronger Judaism, I would say.
Cool.
Which is a move.
Yes.
So from that moment, I grew up in a religious perspective.
So they went from being what just titles for the sake of titles, secular to Orthodox?
Right.
Okay.
I think that more than from being traditional, you do
traditional.
Kiddush.
That's a better term.
You do Kiddush on Friday night and then you watch TV. That's the drill. Many Israelis act this way.
Yes.
It's something very common. To the fact that there's not going to be a TV.
Yeah.
And we're not going to go to the beach in the morning.
Right.
We're going to keep it.
Yeah.
And I think the transition part is always in life when you you do something new, you do it very strong.
Yes.
So they came from like really minimum to wow, like all the way. I think it was good for the family.
Sure.
It was a big move, a big change. And from that on, that's actually what I remember. You ask me now, what do you remember before that? Not much.
Yeah.
Remember watching TV on the Sabbath. It's the funny part.
Yeah.
But after that, a religious upgrowing, I've learned in high school in Netanya. And I think that what really defines me as a person is the fact that, like many other teenagers, I wasn't so much into it.
Sure.
I mean, I'm thinking about like the 10th grade, 11, 12. It's really hard. It's really hard to keep up with all the rules. You're a teenager.
Sure.
You're young. You want to do whatever you want. And I wasn't into it so much.
Yeah.
So I did something very important for me. And it happens a lot in Israel. You just go to the army soon, right? How are you going to survive as a religious person in the army? The pressure is really high. You work really, really hard. Everybody around you are not religious. So you need to define to yourself what you want to do with your next step.
Yeah.
So I went to what we called pre-military academy.
Oh, okay.
Mechina, if you people know the name. And that's basically a school, a biblical school for people that want to ask the big questions of what's going to be with our life in the religious perspective. And that's what we do. We spend a year and a half of learning and getting to know our tradition better. But I'm talking about day, night of asking questions, learning, going to the very essential parts of Judaism. Explain to us, dear rabbis, why are we doing what we're doing?
What a blessing that even exists.
Of course.
You know, I mean, that's like, because what an awesome thing it would be for people of any faith, but especially, you know, Christianity and Judaism, to have that, to say, you know what, before I go off to Western college or this or that, let me go and spend some time devoted to figuring out the big questions of life with some people that I can trust to answer those questions. That's big.
For me, it was a game changer.
Yeah. I think, you know, I want to say, I don't know if it's the same thing, but I sat right here with Rabbi Jeremy Gimpel. I don't know, and he was explaining to me that that he did something along those lines. He took a year or two before going to the military. And I want to, it sounds the same, but
same process.
Yeah.
I can tell you there are different levels of those kind of schools.
Sure.
There are levels of people who are buying into everything.
Yeah.
And they're saying, you know what, just give me the books, give me the lessons, give me the material, and I want to sit and learn. So that's what you're saying. You're saying we need to learn more to be more equipped.
Yeah.
I came from the lowest level, which is I want to ask the questions.
Yeah.
Why? Prove me.
Sure.
I want to know. I want to understand. The whole process, this year and a half.
I like that process. I mean, asking
that's
the good
something
questions.
that many teenagers are doing,
Yeah.
and it's called either a shiva
Sure.
or a mechina. And these are the two elements that I think, honestly, you owe to yourself.
Yeah.
Right? How many times in your life you have the time to really stop and consider, what's your next move?
Sure.
What do you want to do in life? We know what happens then, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
you
yeah,
start,
yeah,
you need to work, you need to get married, you have children, you need to go to university. Life happens to you.
That's right.
When will you ask those questions?
Yeah.
So thank God.
Yeah, it's interesting. Now, you mentioned that in the 4th grade you switched to a religious school. And my understanding is that, like, here we have religious schools, right? But that's like a school that you still go the same hours a day that you do normal school here in the States. And it just has, like, they'll have chapel, and maybe they'll have a Bible class as one of your classes as part of your regular grades. Now, I've heard different scenarios, but in Israel, where you were growing up, was this one of those things where they actually had you all day, and that, like, maybe you went home, like, you were like almost boarding school, and you went home on Tuesdays or some day a week or something like that?
So elementary school, it's the same hours, I would say. Different material altogether, because we need to define something about Israel. All the schools in Israel teach Bible.
Right.
When you teach Bible and you come from a perspective of a belief or just a text, two different worlds.
Sure.
Right, so if in a secular school they would say, the author wrote that, and that's not the Bible, right?
Yeah.
We're not talking about a book. And so in elementary school, that's the difference. Like the way you learn it from when you get to get grade 7, 8, 9, then it's like completely different. Grade 7, 8, I finished it 5 or 6, much longer.
Sure.
And then growing to grade 9, it's already boarding school. And as you said, only Tuesday you come back home, you sleep there, you finish school maybe at 8:30 at night.
Wow.
It's a completely different process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if you want to really have time to learn the biblical side, the Judaic stuff, you need extra time.
Sure.
It makes sense.
Absolutely. So that's incredible. So you went through all of that process, and then you're saying, I mean, kind of my understanding is you're saying that was still academic. So it wasn't until after that process of your regular primary school that you took a year and a half and were able to really say, okay, that's the faith of all the people that taught me. Now, how do I find Shmuel's faith, right?
I'll say more than that, but it's exactly the point. When you have exam in the end of it, because that's what we do, we learn it, how really you can connect with the topic, right? They're going to ask you questions about it, so you know it.
Right.
Happened to you when you learn a subject.
Sure.
And you did an exam, and it went really well. And after the exam, somebody asks you,
you have no
tell
idea.
me, what? Like, I erased it.
Yeah. Information dump. It goes in, you do the exam, you dump it out.
And I think that's one of the biggest problems in the education in that sense, that the teachers are great, but they're focused in actually teaching you for the exam.
Sure.
And when the exam is gone, then everything is gone. So we're really going to relate with. And I think that's a problem, because it could have been two at the same price. Price. If the material would be relevant, and also they're going to try to jump deep inside the water and try really to get the sense of it, it could be great. So we didn't have it. Unfortunately, we need to have this next process of yeshiva mechina.
Yeah. So then you had that process after school, right before you went. When you did go to the military eventually.
Not eventually, after a year and a half
after
learning, I went to 3 years in the army.
And so during this process, obviously it sounds like you feel like that year and a half benefited you.
Changed my life.
Oh, good. So then do you have a defining moment, something that was like the light bulb came on, a question that was answered in a certain way? Do you have something that said, the faith is now mine, rather than it being the faith of my parents or the faith of the rabbis or the faith of our forefathers? When did it become real for you? Like, is there a defining moment you can remember, or a process, or?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
I think you need to think about it, right, for a second. But I actually remember that moment.
Oh, good. That's good.
So it was quite in the middle of the year in the Mechina, and I went to a family wedding. Okay. In my family, we have people that are ultra-Orthodox. They wear black and everything.
Sure.
And we have secular people.
Nice little spectrum.
Happens in every family in Israel.
Absolutely.
You're always going to have the person who went all in and the person who went all out.
Every Christian family in America has it,
So I remember myself sitting there in the table, schmoozing with the people. And I got to a conversation with my secular family member. And I remember we spoke about music. And I love music. I still love music. Remember we were talking about the Doors and Jimi Hendrix and Led Zeppelin and Jimmy Page and that and this and guitar. Like, I loved it. And it was such a long conversation and good. Yeah, we related, right? We were close. So when that conversation ended, I looked to the other side. And there was my same age, black hat, wearing ultra-Orthodox person. And I remember that the conversation didn't end so late. It's like, yes, how are you? Everything is okay. What's new? What's up? What's going on? And that's basically it. And I remember that I thought to myself, why do I have so much things in common with this guy and almost nothing with this guy? But then it really hits me when I told him that I'm in the process of learning, and I was happy about the fact that I'm going to a place to learn advanced Jewish studies. So he mentioned the name of a rabbi, just for the sake of the podcast, and maybe people can Google it. one of the biggest rabbis. His name is Israel Meir HaKohen Miradin.
Okay.
More famous to be a Chafetz Chaim. Chafetz Chaim wrote a famous book about keeping your tongue, not saying bad words.
Sure.
And that's a very famous book, and its name is named according to the book he wrote. He wrote the book Chafetz Chaim, right? It's on the pasuk. If you want to have life, keep your tongue. It's a verse that I don't know how to translate it in this second.
Yeah.
And he named the book Chafetz Chaim, so it was called. The name was changed to Chafetz Chaim. That's the way he's known. So I remember that he mentioned something about the Chafetz Chaim, and I said, yeah, the one who wrote the book about the keeping your tongue. But then he struck me because he was talking about one other famous book that he wrote. He wrote the biggest commentary on the Shulchan Aruch, on the halachic laws of Judaism.
Sure.
Mishnah Brura. Every person knows this book. Every home
But you didn't even know it was by the guy.
Exactly. And then I thought to myself, and that's the point. I know Jimmy Page, I know Jimi Hendrix, I know the world, I know geography, I know biology. I love things, right? Talk to me about any topic, I'm going to have something to say. But when we're talking about my faith, my heritage, my tradition, I'm ignorant.
Huh.
And that struck me. That, you go to a Jewish a yeshiva and you see all those books, and you're never going to finish them. But I know nothing. And the gap was so long. I said, I'm going to dedicate my life even to know more. I cannot be ignorant in the field that matters the most.
Yeah.
Like, it's great to know about guitars and rock and roll and geography and history.
Sure.
And I know this. I care about it.
Yeah.
But what about the most important thing in life?
Right.
My heritage, my religion, my faith. That's the moment I decided, Shmuel, take it serious now.
Yeah. That's interesting. That's awesome that you have a defining moment. There's a lot of people that don't have it.
It's hard to take that moment.
It is, but it's good.
Remember that.
It's good. So, so you're married, right? You've been married for how long?
It's not a question you ask.
Oh, okay.
If I forget now when she's going to listen, she's going to say, let's say between... so I'm married 12 years.
Okay, congratulations. And you have 4 children?
4 children.
It's boys, girls?
So my oldest is Naveh, he's 9 years old soon. And then I have Tal, 7 years old. And then I have Avigail, almost 6 years old. And then I have Nitzan, almost 4 years old.
I have an Abigail. She's 9. That's awesome. So 4 children, married for 12 years, living in the land of Israel. And you said you're living in Samaria.
Correct.
What part of Samaria?
Live in a small community of Tzufim.
Tzufim, okay.
So if you want to look it in the map, search for Kalkilia. That's the biggest Arab city we have next to us. Just above it, you will see Zufim, Tzufim.
Tzufim. Now, is this... I guess, no, that's different. I'm trying to think of the different places biblically. Is this in Samaria, is Tzufim a biblical city, or is there a tell nearby that it's named after, or is it its own new name?
So it's a new name, but it comes from a very interesting perspective, because we are in a high mountain that watches actually the side of the coast. So to litzfot, to be tzufim, means to observe. So it makes sense that when people arrived there and they went on this big hill, and when you come to Israel the next time, I'm not going to say it on the podcast, but you came to Israel and you come and visit.
Yeah, next time.
So you take a coffee and you go to this observation point, and all of the coast in front of you, literally from Cabrera, the power plants, all the way down to Ashdod, all is in front of you.
Wow.
So it's a beautiful spot and named Tzofim.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, the last week I was there, I spent, and I think I mentioned this to you, up on a mountain in between Menaseret and Beit Shemesh. But from where I was, you can look out and see on the one side Tel Aviv, right? And then you can see down all the way to Ashdod and Ashkelon.
Right. That's the point, yeah.
Down in the south.
That's there, yeah.
So it's got to be a similar spot, which is different than the view from, like, say, Har Bracha, where I was with Hayavel. You can still see those things.
You see Shechem in Har Bracha.
Well, yeah. But I mean, from where we were, you could still see Tel Aviv, right? And you could see the Mediterranean Sea, but it's a different view.
Different.
It's way further away.
Because you have mountains that hide everything. My mountain.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So if you come to my mountain, which is the last,
Got
in
it.
Samaria, the coast is open.
Got it. That makes sense. So then it's just the valley and then out to the coast.
Exactly.
From where you are. Got it. Okay. Wow, that's got to be a good view. I
Mhm.
mean, and because then you would be able to see the whole coast, because you can see like Jerusalem from Har Bracha and all that. But I mean, again, we're talking like, see that little gleaming light, see that building on the top of that hill, like you're talking, something, tiny to the.
Al Bacha is really, really, really in the middle land, right?
Yeah, of course.
So,
Yeah.
You can see a lot from it, but you can see Shechem and you can see the Jordan Valley, and you can see different directions.
Sure.
But it's from distance, as you
See,
said.
and then also from Alon Moreh, which is kind of the same view, really. if you
No, in
could-
my army, I spent like 4 months on that mountain of Al Bacha.
Oh, okay.
Right, there's an observation point.
Mhm.
If you know Mitzpeh Yosef,
Oh,
where
yes,
the
of course.
Samaritans
Yep,
live.
Yep. I was there.
Oh,
Actually,
yeah.
it's this morning. I was explaining to my brother the situation in Shechem with the UN building and the quote unquote refugee camp
Mhm.
next to all the mansions,
Right.
and all the empty mansions,
But it's it's a real house of a millionaire.
Oh yeah,
in the
Al Masri.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So in the army, we have codes for everything. We don't say the name. We don't say that big house that looks like a millionaire. We call it the millionaire house,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
As we call I'm not going to use the terms, but every point has a different nickname.
Sure.
So one time in an operation, they went inside the garden of this house. The house you saw from Malbachau and the Samaritans.
Sure.
That was a big problem.
Yeah.
They ruined some fruits there. He complained. Yeah, there's stories there.
Yeah. No
a
doubt.
lot of operation in the area.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, there's a lot going on over there.
Always.
Yeah, even there was some incidents even while we were there, which was the first time in a
many,
long time. Oh yeah.
many.
So it was interesting. We even had, like, for Rosh Hashanah, we had just a small unit that just stayed the night. They were working shifts 9 to 9 and 9 to 9, so they had 12-hour shifts hanging out in Hayevel base camp. Just the
Brother, I
idea.
spent my Seder night in Al Bracha Bet
There you go.
by myself,
Yeah.
literally with 4 other soldiers.
Yeah.
Won't forget this Seder night.
I bet.
Finished it singing songs with a Druze friend from my crew.
Huh?
I had a still my friend
Yeah.
was Druze, not a Jew. We're together in the crew. We were posted there for Lela Seder. You can imagine, you want to be Lela Seder night with your family.
Yeah, of course.
I'm stuck there. And me and him singing Kilo Olam Chasdo and all the Seder songs.
That's funny.
It's great.
Yeah, that's we tried to take care of these guys best we could. They
Give
had
them
they had a good
food,
time.
yes,
Oh yeah,
yeah, sure.
yeah, and they had a good time. So by the time they left, they were well fed and
Happy.
and happy for sure. But yeah, so enough of the IDF and my experience in Israel. Although I just came back, so I'm obviously excited to talk about it. Tell us about Christian Friends of Israeli Communities. Obviously, now we fast forward, right? I mean, there's been a lot that's happened between then and you getting started with CFOIC.
Right.
What is CFOIC? How did you get involved with them? What's the mission and all that?
So CFOIC, it's an organization that was established 24 years ago, I want to say, with a lady named her Sandra Baraz.
Oh yeah,
Everybody knows Sandra.
yeah, for sure.
It's really probably one of the most famous figures in the world of what we're doing here.
Oh wow,
Christian Zionism, if you want to call it, or Judea and Samaria, Christian relations. And Sandra, she worked in different organizations that want to promote. She's an Orthodox Jew, originally from Cleveland, came to Israel, and somebody approached her, a Christian Zionist from Colorado, that says, Sandra, we need to do something. We need to share the story of the communities.
yeah,
We call it communities.
the
but
pioneers.
obviously the settlers.
Yeah,
They are a story that needs to be told. And some 22 years ago, when it really wasn't that popular today, thank God there's many people working in the field, she started by herself. She began walking into churches, telling the story of our communities. And just to put it in context, right? We are talking about the biblical heartland. Simple as that. Right? If you learned the Bible, if you heard about the Bible, if you read the stories, you see places 3,000 years later, the same places are where Jews live today in Yehuda v'Shomron, in Judea and Samaria. And the news call it the West Bank.
I know, isn't that crazy?
And the news ask the questions, how are we connected and related to this area?
Yeah. Which they call it the West Bank, but it's really the East Bank, if you think about it.
The East Bank of...
The Jordan.
Why it's the East Bank?
Well, the East Bank, sorry, the East Bank of Israel.
Of Israel.
Right, it's the eastern portion of Israel.
So, of course, the West Bank calls it from with the Jordan relatives.
Right.
And we have people questioning our connection there. And if you don't need to be majoring in history to know the story of the Jewish people.
Yeah, of course.
We were exiled for 2,000 years and we prayed. You know, I always give this context. I told you where my family's from.
Yes.
What's the connection between Algeria, Tunisia, Colombia, Czechoslovakia, Hong Kong? That everywhere you go, Jewish people are praying with the same book and they talk about returning to the land of Israel, returning to Jerusalem. And every time talking about the Seder night,
yeah.
L'shana haba'a b'Yerushalayim habnuya.
Yeah.
Next year in Jerusalem.
That's right.
So that was the dream, and that was the prophecy that we waited for so many years. And then in 1948, great establishment of the State of Israel. It's not enough. It's not enough. Right? The prayers and the hopes and the dreams of going back to our land was focused in that area.
Right.
Because
since Bar Kokhba, I mean, this is 2,000 years.
You know, you think about it always, right? You know, you imagine, a Jewish grandmother telling her grandchild about the land.
Yeah.
And of course, that's one of the biggest phenomena that nobody can explain. How is a nation keeping this dream alive? It's not normal, right?
It's not normal.
2,000 years.
No, it's unique and it's God ordained, right? I mean, there's no other way to explain it.
So you have a story of this grandmother telling a story to their grandchildren, and obviously she mentions places like where it all started from, Hebron, where Abraham buys the grave of Sarah.
Sure.
And then she continues about the dream that Jacob has in Bethel, and of course then you have the story about Shechem and all those places, one after another.
Well, and Jacob buys a field in Shechem, right? I mean,
that's everything.
Yeah.
And we are talking about the places that the story starts. So imagine that the story that the grandchildren listens to, that's where we want to go back. That's the hope. That's the dream. And then in 48, after these long past, right? It's been somewhere there. We received Tel Aviv.
Yeah.
Receive Netanya. And it's okay, great. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
But
that's not the biblical heartland.
That's not the biblical heartland. You're talking about our connection to the land more than all the politics and all the security issues that we can and we should discuss, Rabbi, just what it means.
Yeah.
But forget about it soon. Our listeners right now, a person who reads the Bible, who believes the Bible, see the connection between the Jewish people and the land from the get-go.
Right.
It's not even a question.
Well, wouldn't it be nice to go back to 1917, right? And 21 or whatever these years are where the groundwork is being laid for Transjordan and these other places, which, by the way, nobody wants to mention, were created by, the League of Nations with a precursor to the UN by Western countries just drawing lines. Right. They talk about how Israel was just drawn up with lines by Western countries.
Right.
But, I mean, that's how all those countries got their borders after the Ottoman Empire fell after World War I. So it's no mystery what happened. The question is, why is it that everyone is okay with the borders of every other country except for the Jewish one? And we all know it's just Jew hatred. It's good old-fashioned Jew hatred. So I digress.
We have a problem. We have a problem with the narrative over the story. I travel a lot in the U.S.
Sure.
And I get this from many pastors that the podcasts are being listened by younger people.
Yeah.
And I hope that younger people are going to listen to this podcast and they're going to ask themselves, or they should research about the narrative that's being sold to them by the Palestinians. And I'm talking now the politics, not the biblical perspective.
Of course.
In the story of what happens today in the Middle East, in Israel, we are portrayed as the Goliath against the Davids.
Yeah, of course.
So in the mind and soul of young people who care about justice and equality, we are the bad guys.
Yep.
And as a soldier, a former soldier, and as a person in Israel, I see the situation and I say, for the love of God, it is so far in distance from your reality. My son, Nave, 9 years old, he goes to school on a bulletproof bus. He's an obstacle for peace. He's endangering somebody. It's the kid in his school. Everybody needs to be keeping their security by driving in a bulletproof bus. Does it make any sense?
No, it doesn't make any sense.
So, I'm frustrated. I'm thinking that's, by the way, the engine that allows me to fly from North Carolina to Florida to Texas. I'm all over the place because we have such a compelling reality that is not being passed well.
Yeah.
And this is the struggle. Right? You came from there, so you saw it all the time.
So so let's get some groundwork here. The West and the left on the West will call the area that we call the biblical heartland.
Let's call it Judea and Samaria.
Judea and Samaria. They'll call
Samaria is north in Jerusalem,
right?
And in the south is Judea,
right?
Okay.
But the West and the left will call it the West Bank, right? Which
occupied territories.
Or the occupied territories. Exactly right. Yeah. And so what they're referring to is this area that used to be part of Jordan before Jordan attacked Israel in 1967.
Right.
And then according to international law, when somebody attacks you, a neighboring country attacks you, and you take land, you get it. It's your land because you were not the aggressor, right? So we know that according to international law, Israel could have and should have annexed Judea and Samaria at the time.
Should have.
Now, well, and it's more complicated, right? I mean, there's demographics issues and stuff like that. But they also, at the same time, got the Sinai Peninsula of Egypt
and the Golan Heights.
So you get all of these different areas. So they give back the Sinai,
right?
And then later they give up Gaza.
Oh, that's a much later.
Of course, this
different
is
story.
2015. And so what we have is a history of when you give up the land in order to gain the peace, that the land gets transferred, but the peace never comes.
I want to say that Sinai is a bit different. Sinai works pretty well.
Eventually.
Right. But it works really well.
Yeah.
Eventually. But I think Gaza is the best lesson. Right.
But let's be real. Sinai was never really intended to be part of Israel.
Right. We never intended to take it. Right.
Right. So it wasn't. That's a different kind of an outlier altogether, I suppose. So then you have this area where brave Jewish men and women are saying, no, Tel Aviv is part of Israel today, but the biblical heartland of Israel and the place that we are supposed to be is Judea and Samaria. This is the biblical heartland. This is when we open up our Bibles and, just today, right, we're reading, I guess this week is Noah, right? But then I'm also in Joshua, right? So I mean, just this morning I read Joshua 9, and we're talking about the Gibeonites. We just came through Jericho, right? We're talking, that's all. He's going to then come through the Tirzah Valley.
Exactly.
We're talking about places where you stand on Har Bacha and Alon Moreh, and even from your place, and you can see these places because they're part of Israel. So then the CFOIC now is operating, in my understanding, to support these brave men and women that are going and planting a flag and saying, hey, we're not just gonna say this is ours, right? We're gonna go and we're gonna take our whole families and we're gonna live in these places.
It's important to know, though, that you're describing something. Then if the listener is not familiar with the situation, he thinks we're talking about 20 families that are taking a hill and sitting there in a caravan.
Of course, yeah.
Let's go back.
There's still some of that, but
some of that, but not the main issue.
No.
The movement, the settling movement, and let's call it settling. We are CFOIC communities, but we shouldn't be ashamed of what really happened. It was acclaimed on the place that our forefathers walked in. And you want to know? Well,
there's a modern claim after the 6-Day War,
right,
and an ancient claim.
So we're going about the biblical terms, because in the end of the day, when we're talking about the politics, there's always going to be the other side. Yes, but.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
according to him and according to her. I don't care about the politics. I want to talk about our relations to the Bible. And I think that's what connects
Sure.
Christians and Jews, because we believe in the same book.
Amen.
Listen to this. My wife's grandmother took herself and her kids, left Tel Aviv, and established the first community in Samaria, Kdumim,
Huh.
not far from Al-Bracha.
Yeah.
My mother-in-law was born and raised. I'm talking in 68, 69, 70, 71.
Yeah. That's
the
incredible, because
first
even
timers.
like Itamar wasn't established to like what, the 80s.
Right. So the first community that was established, actually, Kdumim, after they were splitted, there were two different places, the Oak of Moreh, Elon Moreh, and then Kdumim, and you had people in Mevo Choron, never mind. But the community of Kdumim was established by my wife's grandmother.
Wow, that's incredible.
My wife's mother, my mother-in-law, born and raised in Kdumim. She then moved to establish the community of Tzufim.
Huh.
My wife was born a settler, born and raised, which makes my kid fourth generation. So we're not talking about a couple of families. Let's talk about the numbers for a second. We're talking about more than 40 years of establishing communities in Judea and Samaria, when my kids are the fourth generation among somewhere between 500,000 Jews
Yeah.
in cities, in communities, in all over the place.
Well, and let me just say that, like, we caught some, like, a bug when we got to Israel, right? So I don't know if it was just some respiratory virus of some sort. COVID, I don't know if it was or not. We didn't get tested for COVID because it didn't really matter. But cough, sniffles, the whole bit. And my son got it the worst of us out of the family. And there's a great medical facility in Harbacha that we were able to go to and receive services.
Okay.
And so you go to this place and there's like a grocery store and tall apartment buildings
Right.
and houses. So to your point, this wasn't like caravans on a hilltop, right? This was a city.
But it started on caravans.
No doubt.
Every
back
hill,
in the day.
every community you see started with a couple of caravans,
Sure.
and they develop. They believe, so they grow.
Yeah.
So they build a house, and they build a neighborhood, and they build a building. And Al Bracha is so successful, so populated, that now there's not enough room, so they build in buildings. It's funny, right? Because Judea
It
and
is.
Samaria is like always very, very like not high. But thank God people want to move.
I went through several of the Arab villages and they're empty, which is different, because it's like you have all this money being poured into these places by the EU and our competition is these large conglomerate governmental organizations, right? They're raising money. Like when you drive through the village at the bottom of the mountain, there's a big USAID sign
Sure.
on the roundabout. And I'm like, so my tax dollars are going to build these buildings. And then like you look in them and there's shells. There's nobody in there.
Sure.
And you're like, well, what are you're building it to say you did something with the money, But
I think that
which is the opposite of what the Jewish communities are doing, right? They're building and populating and
I
growing.
think when you go there, you understand one of the biggest problems we have. Yeah, we, for every porch,
Yeah.
you want to open a porch in your home, the amount of agreements, bureaucracy,
Yeah.
laws, money you need to pay to make it happen, you're going to get like 10 years older.
Yeah.
The village behind you,
Do whatever they
bring concrete and you can build. That's literally what they do. When they build a house, they build 3-4 floors above it, to the child, to the grandchild, to the nephew, to the cousin. Yeah, what happens there is like it's a different story. But
Sure.
I don't care about what they
So then
what
how
they
does
build.
CFOIC support these communities?
So exactly. So that's where it starts to be serious now, because until now it sounded like we are in heaven, like we're fulfilling a prophecy, we're living the dream. Not easy. While we live there, every day, and I'm talking about every day, the Arabs of the area wants to throw us out of there.
Sure.
And I'm talking about a situation where in the last 2 months, I would say we had roughly 500 incidents. I'm talking about stones. I'm talking about shooting. I'm talking about Molotov bottles. I'm talking about non-stop attack with one reason. They want to make our life there miserable. And during the years, if you remember, we had so many casualties.
Oh, yeah.
Literally in every community, a couple died on the road. I just heard a podcast about the time, in the Intifada, when every morning they started the morning with saying the 3, 4, or 5 places, roads that people were shot. And what happened right now, when people are going to listen to it, maybe it's going to be more, maybe it's going to be less. But this is a new kind of Intifada, which I must say something about the politics in Israel, which doesn't work so well, that we have a situation that nobody talks about it. Nobody knows that there's a new Intifada on the roads now. It is not safe to drive in my neighborhood. I'll tell you a story. Happened to me. Not a legend. A year and a half ago, 11 o'clock at night, I'm driving back home from a meeting in Tel Aviv. And I arrived next to my home. As I said, there's a big town of Kalkilia. And it's like a very dark road. I'm driving there with my car. And it was quite a good-looking car. And I'm driving, and somebody behind me opens his lights and begins to drive really, really fast behind me, until the point he strikes me in the back. What happens? That's the drill. They do that. They make you stop on the side of the road. They throw you from your car in the good time, sometimes with violence, and they take your car. That's something that happens once, twice, and 3 times every day in our road. When they blame us for apartheid, it wouldn't happen if we would drive our own road. We are driving with them on the same roads, and that's what happened to us.
Yeah.
On the way to school, stones. I work in Karnei Shomron in the CFOIC office. This road has incidents daily. So what CFOIC is doing? We understand, as Christians do, that people who live in Judea and Samaria are struggling.
Yeah.
And their life is not amazing as it should be. They decided to live there out of ideology.
Right.
They decided to live there because they believe that they are part of redemption, the land of Israel.
Right.
And we're trying to help them. If it's insecurity, if we're bringing new cameras, new equipment that's needed, if we're talking about something that's going to help them with, just for example, how far is Al Bracha from the big near city?
How far?
Yeah.
Big near city?
Big near city.
I mean, very close to Shechem.
Yeah, I'm talking about in Israel.
But there's a giant sign that says you're not allowed to go there.
Yeah, of course. I'm saying
because
for
of the Israeli apartheid, of course.
How long?
Which I want to make sure I clear that up. The sign says Israelis are not allowed to go there.
According to the law, it's against the law, and you're risking your life.
Yeah, dangerous to your life. Whereas it's obviously the Palestinians, the so-called Palestinian Arabs don't have the issue of that. They can go wherever.
Anywhere. So I was asking, you go from Al Bracha, you want to go to a city?
I don't know. There's a little village on the bottom of the mountain, Huara, and then
it's Arab.
Yeah, that is also Arab.
It's Israeli.
So then the next closest village would be what? Itamar?
It's a village. There's nothing there. A city. Let's say, God forbid, there's a kid with special needs and he needs treatment. There's special...
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
Petach Tikva?
Yeah.
45 minutes?
Maybe, yeah.
Think about the fact when you live there in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, because I'm thinking Shiloh, I'm thinking Itzar, I'm thinking...
all these are small towns.
Yeah, small towns, yeah.
They don't have what we're talking about.
Yeah.
A person who's retired, a elder citizen home, whatever.
Yeah.
Where do they go? What do? You need to drive 45 minutes to the theater in Petach Tikva or in Tel Aviv?
Nah, yeah.
Living life in Judea and Samaria has its limitations. We understand it.
Well, because it's almost like you start out like you're camping, and then you're glamping, right? and then you establish homes and things like that. But like I was talking about in Har Bracha, the medical facility is there, but this is obviously a small clinic. This wasn't like a major hospital.
And it's probably brand new.
Yeah.
And now there's an emergency center down next to the base as well.
Yeah.
CFOIC just helped them buy this ultrasound device for pregnant ladies. They
awesome.
didn't have in all of the region.
So check this out. So one of the things that I learned because I was on security duty while I was up on the mountain, because there were some incidents and things going on. So we were taking shifts because they wanted people on the cameras 24/7, whereas normally you just, you have the cameras to watch in case, but sometimes you need people like monitoring and then doing patrols, right? So we would do patrols and then also be watching the cameras. But the cameras at night, you can't see a thing if you just have regular cameras.
Right. So what do you have?
So these are specialty cameras that have night vision and thermal imaging. So, praise God, most of the things that we saw were deer and foxes and, things like that. But we did have some people go onto the side of the hill and were doing like a midnight mikvah, which was interesting because they were getting married the next day.
And you saw people walking.
So I'm like, I see people, so I'm on the horn, like, hey guys, we got 3 people over at the, this location and whatnot. But still, those cameras, I want to say, are like $20,000 a piece.
So go on our website, CFOIC, and write Rechelim.
What is it?
Rechelim.
Rechelim, okay.
It's near Arbacha.
Yeah.
A community that CFOIC donors gave thermal camera Friday night evening. It catches 2 terrorists under the fence going inside the community.
Yeah.
And we know for a fact that without this camera, they wouldn't be stopped.
Yeah.
So now the thermal camera sees them. The emergency, security guard comes and stops it.
Yep.
We are literally saving life. And I know people ask the obvious questions. Where's your army? Where's the IDF? They cannot be everywhere at the same time.
Right.
We're talking about many communities, many soldiers. Everybody's keeping us. But there's more needs.
And they are doing a great job.
Yeah.
But without the cameras, right? The cameras help everybody.
You cannot be everywhere at the same time.
Yeah. Now, so security is a big deal, right?
Huge.
Is a huge deal. And having the security infrastructure, cameras, fencing, security roads for the IDF to drive on, right? Because, the IDF will do it if they feel compelled, but if you're the one with the community, they'll be much happier if, they'll if the road gets built, they'll use it to patrol.
No, I would say that they would control it anywhere. They don't have any requests. But when you have limited resources, you need to think where to invest.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. This community of Migdalim, it's on the way from Tappuach Junction going to the Jordan Valley.
Okay, yep.
Isolated community.
Tappuach Junction is the junction that says, I heart Shomron, right?
Right.
It's an Apple Junction.
Right. And they have it's an isolated community, and they have one road that takes them to the community, and it's on the hill. The problem is that there's a village sits on the main road. So literally every day when they enter the community, they have stones, they have things, they're trying to disturb them.
It's ridiculous.
You know what we were able to do? Pave a new road, an exit road for the emergency
Build
car.
a road around it, got it.
The army would never get there. They wouldn't help building it. There's many needs. And every community...
But they'll use it once you have it.
Right. Now they use it, and they're going to use also the road that they had in the past.
Yeah.
And I'm saying the fact that you can bring help, and you can bring cameras, and you can bring equipment, and you can bring cars of emergency, and you can bring firefighters to the community, help them. It is changing their lives. And I'm talking that's only from the security perspective. Also for elders and special needs. A playground in a community that doesn't have it, you know how much it changes?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's on and on projects, and CFOIC is only the pipe. We are the bridge. Christian friends wants to give, wants to help. They go on our website, they see the communities, and see, wow, look at their needs. Look at the way they live, and you've been there.
Oh, yeah.
They're not people who are searching for a leisure life and more comfortable.
These are hard-working folks.
Swimming pool in a clubhouse.
Brave folks. These are
pioneers.
Yes, absolutely. So then I guess if I understand it, this is a way for Christians who say, they may be listening or they may be watching, they're saying, I love Israel.
Right.
Lots of people say that.
Right.
Right? But I think that there's a reality to Israel that maybe a lot of people are not aware of.
Right.
The first and foremost is the most contested areas of Israel are the most Israeli areas. Right? You mentioned it. Hebron, right? Contested, mostly an Arab village, but who purchased it? Right? Abraham Avinu, right? So we're talking about Abraham bought this land, but yet it's still contested to this
Right.
day. So this is one place. Then Jacob's Field, purchased, right? Right there in Shechem, right below the overlook that you were referring to.
Mm-hmm.
Jerusalem, right? The Temple
David.
Mount.
Right.
So this is David, purchases from the Jebusite. So we have all these places that are so-called Palestinian, right? But yet are actually the most Israelite places in the whole country.
You're right.
And if there is a claim to be made by the Jewish people for any part of the land, this is the part of the land. So those that say they support Israel, this is a way, because what you guys are doing is you guys are saying, hey, okay, guys, what's the need in this community? What's the need in this community?
You're
and
right.
you're collecting it, and then you're giving the opportunity to Christians to be friends and to say, hey, let me give towards what I say I support.
You're defining it really, really good. And I would say this. I would say, to put it this way, it's always a question that needs to be asked, right? When we look at history. And I'm going to ask you, you asked me about a defining moment in my life of my faith to Judaism. What was the time in history you wanted to go back to participate in? It's a hard question. You personally,
For me, to go to Israel.
Yeah. Israel, not Israel, any time in history you want to participate in. You're saying, I
want to be in this time in
wanna
history.
be that in history.
Yeah, I would definitely say the Second Temple period.
Yeah?
Yeah, around the time.
So people always
Yeah.
tends to give something in the past that was crucial.
Yeah.
There's crazy things that we saw there and we were
Interesting,
exposed. Because people want to be involved and do something big for themselves and for the community and for the better good. When you look at Israel today and you visited Israel, you see a modern state. You see a place that has everything. It's not far from any big major city in the U.S., especially when you go to the big towns in Netanya and Tel Aviv, even Jerusalem.
Yeah, even Jerusalem.
But when you come to Judea and Samaria, you say to yourself, for the love of God, they're like living in places that in 2022, with all the struggles and all the way that people choose where to live according to leisure, safety, benefits their own good, these are really something you would call a pioneer.
Yeah.
So you want to participate in something that's challenging Israel?
Oh, yeah.
You want to really help Israel? Help them where they need it.
And help the real Israel. I mean,
It's the real
you
Israel,
can give to World
and
Vision.
it's the real struggle
and
of
they're going to
Israel.
go and build our Arab village,
I'm saying it's the real, it's where Israel struggles. It's on our right in Judea and Samaria, and these are the people who struggle day in, day out in their lifetime.
Yeah.
That's real support and help where it matters.
Well, and again, there's a lot of people that are going to watch or see other people that are supposedly supporting Israel. And unfortunately, a lot of these organizations have been around for a long time. And because they're established large organizations, they're very heavy as far as what they have in administrative costs. Right? And then once they get heavy in administrative costs, they get people from like the academic world and the nonprofit world in there that are left-leaning. And it starts to move the organizations left. And while they still say on the one side, hey, we're here to support Israel, literally they're building Arab villages. In Area C, mind you, right? Which I don't even have time to get into what that means. Just let's say that it's not good. It's the opposite of what people are giving towards when they're doing that.
I'm not going to say anything negative about any other organization. I would say just if people come to Israel, they should contact CFOIC to see what happens to the Jewish people in the biblical heartland.
Yeah.
We promised every person to give him the time to see with his own eyes. If you're a church, if you're a pastor, if you're organizing a trip to Israel, you can go on the same path where Jesus walked. It's great.
Yeah.
If you want to see what happens, the struggle that people has on the biblical heartland in Judea and Samaria, CFOIC is there on the ground. We have a Christian office here in Colorado Springs, and we have the Israeli office with Jewish Orthodox Jews that live in the ground. I think that connection, that bridge, is really something that defines us.
I agree with that. So, okay, so let's back up one step and say Jews and Christians, Jews and non-Jews, working together. Obviously, we can say that we've defined here today an area that they can work together on.
Right.
But what is it for the Christians? What do you say to a Christian to kind of turn the light bulb on so that they understand why they should be supporting the Jewish people and in the land of Israel, and more specifically the heartland of Israel?
It's a hard question, because I'll tell you this. Never in my lifetime I would thought that I would come and sit in a church and talk with pastors about this. Listen, I put it on the table. I wasn't aware of this movement at all.
Sure.
I was born and raised in Israel. I gave you my biography.
Yeah, sure.
They never teach you in the school about this movement. They never going to talk about people who care about Israel. It's always about negative, about how they hate us, about the UN, about this and that.
Yep.
And I want to share with you the moment that really defined my approach to this. Maybe that's going to help you understand where I'm coming from. So I skipped that in my biography, but I said that my kids were born in Hong Kong.
Right.
What led me to Hong Kong? After a couple of years in Israel of learning, after the army, I went to another Bible school for many years. I really was into it, right? That where it changed my life, because after the army, I went for a couple of years of learning, more advanced learning, maybe to be a rabbi. And then my wife told me, let's go and to be educators for a couple of years somewhere in the world. That's something you do. And we ended up in Hong Kong. I was the head of the Jewish Studies department in the Jewish Day School there.
That's cool.
Didn't even knew there's Jews in Hong Kong. Whatever.
Go figure, right?
So when I lived there, we had the privilege to travel around Asia. And for the first time in my life, I saw people that not only they're not against the Jewish people or Israel, they actually like us.
Yeah.
You go to China. Oh, Israel, great. Somebody asked me once, how many Jews live in the world? I told them maybe 15 million, 16 million. He said, no, not in China, in the world. I said, in the world. They see the Jewish people in Israel is that it's something so out there.
Yeah.
And we traveled and we saw how there's a lot of admire to Israel. But really what hits me is the hit. What's the hit? In New Zealand, there are people who host Israelis, Christians who host Israelis at their homes free of charge. They are literally fighting to host Israelis backpackers.
That's funny.
And there's a list of people wherever they live, what they provide. And Israeli backpackers can live for free. I was never told that. Nobody told me about this movement. Nobody ever said that it's actually something that happens.
Sure.
So it strikes me as like, okay, there's something there. And when I came back and I got to know Sandra and I got to this organization, one of the first things I did is like, I wanna ask questions. I'm not sure I want to be involved in this. Honestly, I was never. My education, you always ask questions.
Yeah.
Who said it's the right thing? So one of the first person I met, a pastor, I asked him the question you asked. What's your connection? Why should you care?
Yeah.
I came from a very Israeli, non-naive situation, and that's what he told me. He told me that he was a child in 1948 when Israel was established. And his father woke up in the morning and said to him, it's rare that in our lifetime we see a prophecy coming true in front of our eyes.
That's right.
And when Israel was established, at that moment, every person who believed the Bible had to get this crazy strike of, wow.
Yeah, amen.
It's actually happening. It's against the odds. All the prophet talked about Israel resurrecting, coming back to their land, but it's like, come on, look at them. And when it happened, so many people gained this new belief, or I wouldn't say new belief, but they got it now. Mm-hmm. They saw with their eyes something they never dreamed that's going to happen. And it didn't stop there. 67, reclaiming the land, making Israel the powerhouse it is now.
Amen.
That's the strongest proof that the prophets were indeed correct. And that is the truth. And that pastor told me, when I see Israel, when I support Israel, I also gain this belief that my other prophecies are going to come true.
That's right. Well, and if the prophecies for the Jewish people and for Israel and the promises that God made to the Jewish people in Israel are not true, then what hope do we as Christians have of the promises that we're holding on to so tightly, you know? And so as it reminds me of, because again, I was just reading Joshua this week, you know? It reminds me of the 3 tribes on the east side of the Jordan.
Right, 2.5.
Right. Well, yeah, 2.5. Right. So the half tribe Manasseh and
Reuben
and Reuben and Gad. So how, in order for them to receive their promise, they had to go and help the rest of the nation receive their promise, and then and only then could everybody live under that promise. And I think that that's how we are. Our fates are inextricably, like, you can't separate our fates. That the Bible doesn't talk about some new entity called the church being created, right? It talks about how the nations, right? People from the nations will come out and they will hold on to the God of Israel and the Sabbath and all of these things, right? These are the prophecies. So if you want to be part of the prophecies, you just got to choose. Do you want to be part of it or do you not, right?
So I wouldn't say that to a person. I'm not a Christian. It's hard for me to mess with someone's beliefs.
Sure.
And I think that's something also that needs to be said here. Jews working with Christians always comes with this pre-notion that we are respecting one another.
Mutual respect.
Respect, no evangelizing, and not going and educate you about the real beliefs that I have.
Yeah.
Never do that. Always mutual respect.
Sure.
But when I hear people telling me that's what strengthened my religion, that's what the prophecy, I say amen to that.
Amen. Amen. Awesome. Well, this is really cool. I'm so glad we got to spend this time together.
Sure.
If somebody hears this and says, I want to be part of supporting the pioneers in Judea and Samaria, I want to be part of helping these communities either gain access to better security or medical care or special needs care or whatever it is, whatever the needs are, where can they go to find out more information and to participate?
So first of all, before the needs, forget about the needs now.
Okay.
Come get educated.
Yeah.
Come learn the topic.
Sure.
Understand the topic. Come visit the communities. And if not visit physically when you're standing there, although you're more than invited.
Yeah.
We also have trips to Israel, especially those places.
Yeah.
We just have a trip now in November. 2 weeks in the biblical heartland.
Wow.
And what we're saying is more than that. Is go online, write CFOIC on YouTube, and you will get informed, and you will see the communities, and you're going to get a lot of content related to this topic. Of course, go our website. You can,
which is CFOIC.com.
CFOIC.com. You can subscribe to our newsletters. We constantly send information and news and updates about what happens from somebody who actually lived there, understand what happens, and lives it. I think that's the best thing. And just shoot us an email and we will answer gladly. All in our website, CFOIC.com.
Perfect. Okay. Well, then there you have it, guys. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you spending a generous amount of time with us. You guys have obviously now met Shmuel Junger with CFOIC. And obviously there's a lot more than just a name and an organization, right? There's a lot behind that. And so I appreciate you taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll definitely stay in touch. And I hope that those of you that are listening, I hope this moves you to an understanding that there is a need. And I know you say forget about the need. I say remember the need, support the organization, CFOIC, because what they're doing is they're literally taking the need and connecting the dollars to those needs, buying the cameras, putting in the fencing, putting in the playground, helping, either establish or maintain places that will support elder care and or special needs care or whatever. And that's just a few things to mention, right? I mean, I know there's a lot more than that. So praise God. If you guys want to reach out to us, as you guys know, you can reach me at ryan@twopraise.net, ryan@twopraise.net. Obviously, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to see your comments and your thoughts about, good, bad, and indifferent about what we've, said here today. And if you have any questions, you can obviously comment or ask questions on here. So bless you guys. Have a great week.